Vivacious. We're here together revolutionizing America. We're going to go down being the best generation that ever lived because we're going to grow us. And today we have the perfect person to talk to us about a very important part in life, and that's Carlos Scott. Mrs. Scott, would you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, thank you for having me. Yes, Carlos Scott with Envision Marketing. I'm a veteran PR marketing executive. I've been blessed over the last 2 decades to represent a very diverse pool of clients, from Olympic gold medalists, Super Bowl champions, Hollywood actors, Grammy winners, even politicians and so forth. But more importantly, people such as yourself as well, people that are getting to the roots and the cause of the nitty-gritty in the community.
Well, let me tell you, this guy, words can't explain what he means in my life.
No.
I really didn't fit, okay? But he believed in me, and I want you to know in front of the world that I appreciate you more than anything.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you for believing in me. That was so important because we could have never gotten here to build America. And he said all of those great things about me, y'all, and I appreciate that. But the biggest thing we came to discuss today, first of all, let me say he's a man of such discipline. He's a man of such character. When a man knows where he's going and what he's doing, a person can submit, a woman can submit. And I was very, very, what do you call that when you just hold on to it? I wasn't sharing my dream because I believed in everything I had to save America, and it wouldn't be safe in anybody else's arms because I had to get this message out because, let me correct that, I'm not saving America, but the people of America have to wake up. The real revolution is going to be the evolution of our consciousness, and we had to wake up. And he believed in it, but through the years, he proved to me how he believed in it. And when I let go, is when it all happened. So first, I want to say that first of all. Thank you so much for believing in this impossible vision that I got laughed at so much about. But the greatest thing to me about this man, you know, like you do all these great things for other people, but it means the world to me that you're a single father.
Oh.
And I watch through the internet and through our conversations what a great father you are.
Oh, thank you.
And I was reading the scripture that God said he will return the heart of the father to the son and the son to the father. And I think that in this talk today, that it's going to make many fathers think.
Hope so.
How does it feel? I mean, like, my daddy used to say that was the hardest cross he ever had to bear, was to raise us alone. What is the hardest part about raising your son?
Well, first of all, let me jokingly say, fatherhood is the best hood that I've ever lived in.
All right now.
But it's been a journey, and that's a book within itself of how we got here. But those that know my story know that this year made the 6th year of my son living with me full time. That was a major adjustment. Those who know, like, my busy schedule and travel and our clients and just the commitment that it takes just to run a business, period, especially one that's so demanding, and then to throw in single fatherhood on top of that. His mother lives out of state, and so but as I tell people all the time, I didn't do it, and I'm not doing it to get any awards or any sympathy or any accolades. I'm doing it because that's what God put me here to do. And because I grew up in the family dynamic that I did, I'll just be very transparent. My father wasn't really there for me the way that I wished, wanted, or needed him to be at various aspects. But guess what? Come full circle, now we have a great relationship. He doesn't miss a birthday, doesn't miss a holiday. Isaiah, my son, just got an opportunity to actually stay with him while we were in my hometown. But I can't do what I do for the kids around this country and not do something for my own seed. So that's very important to be a living testament for what I do with personally and professionally when it comes back to giving back to the youth.
Well, you said something very important. It was little, but it was bigger than the world. My own seed. We see so many fathers and that's why I thought it was important to have this conversation, that don't understand that their children are their seed, or take that responsibility till this is my seed. And in all fairness, let's say there's a lot of moms that block that. That this is my seed. And it amazes me because when I look around, there's so many children that don't have their father's name, don't know their fathers, never met their fathers. And fathers are across the world, around the world, that could be next door, but they wouldn't know. And I want you, from a man's point of view and from a father's point of view, to talk about something a lot of us that's trying to run it can't say. A man and his seed. How is that important, and not only for the life of your son? See, that's what we say, babies. That's what women say. That's why boys need to be with their daddy. The point of your son, but that love that you have for him, can you try to convey it so maybe somebody else might hear and think about where they left their children?
Wow. Simply put, it's a blessing to be a father, and it's an honor. And not to go too far down that rabbit hole, what you laid, that landmine, or however you want to call it. But yes, there are some mothers that are adamant about not having the fathers of these children in their lives, okay? Unfortunately, in those situations, the main person or people that are hurt are the children, because regardless of whether or not that relationship with you ended, whether it was through divorce or they went on about their life, whatever the case may be, incarceration, they still need to have an open door so that they can have that relationship with that father. And the numbers don't lie as well. When you look at, especially within the African American community, the number of single-parent household-led families, it's embarrassing. It's past the point of epidemic. It's embarrassing. But then you also look on the flip side, and as it relates to the incarceration of people, the numbers don't lie. That if a child is raised by their father versus the child only being raised by the mother, those children that were raised only by their mother have a drastically higher chance of going to jail or being some sort of incarceration situation than those, male or female, that were raised by their father. Now, that's not to blame the mothers, because I believe that the mothers have a lot on their table. You're a mother, so you know how much you have on your table raising your children. But I just think it comes down to, you said something key, we do love differently. You know, my son, I'm going to be firm with him. I'm going to love on him, but I'm also going to I believe in discipline. And sometimes, some mothers, not all, there's an effort in this generation especially to try to be the kids' friends. I'm friendly with my son, but I'm not your equal. I'm not your friend. Or my grandma said, I'm not one of your little friends. So, and I think when you love on your children in an environment where they see you show up, and the best way for them to see you to show up is to show up. they'll get it. They might not get it. I didn't get it. Some of the things my mother used to do with me, but I had my grandfathers on both sides of my family were stalwarts. And, they were the foundation of my family. And so I'm only passing on the torch that I was left. And as I often tell people, I'm the father to my son that I wish that I had. And that's the only rule or foundation that I stand on, is that I know, my father not being there, he left a blueprint of what not to do, and I just do the opposite. And that's just the truth about it. But it's so important for us to be there for our seeds so they can see, because there's something about when a father loves, even on his daughter, when the father, a lot of times, is the first man that a young girl, for all of his purposes, falls in love with. That's her first boyfriend. She just infatuated with her daddy. Okay, and
absolutely.
And so, and then as young boys, even myself, when I was drastically younger, I just wanted to do everything my dad did. I wanted to ride motorcycles. I wanted to do whatever he did. So we have a very important, but more importantly, impactful role. And I just want other men to see that don't give up, first and foremost. Go use whatever resources you can, legally, spiritually, you name it, monetarily wise, to stay there in your children's lives. But it's going to be rough sometimes, but the stick-to-itiveness is what you need to pay more attention to. You just got to stay the road.
Right, and I was talking to a friend of mine, and her and her husband are divorced, a coworker. They're divorced, but she co-parents well. She said, I said, tell me something that's very valuable with you and the boys as far as their dad comes. She said, that's because he participates in the care. If I say something one time, if I say it twice, they know if I stop talking, then I'm gonna call their dad. And he's very easily accessible. When I call, they know he's coming. So saying the presence, that's very important, because we can't get money confused. I'm not saying that dads don't, but single dads, I don't know too many of them that get a check, okay? But anyway, we're not going to talk about that, because that's not the important thing here. And some people's feelings might get hurt. But the necessity of his presence build character in their future. Like she said, one time I was on the phone with their dad and they didn't know. And her son was telling this big lie to his mom. His mom said, his dad said, told her mom, he's fooling you. He's fooling you. He's getting over. That's not the truth. And till this day, she said, I don't understand how he knew it wasn't the truth. So is there some perception, where does knowing a child like the dad knows a child is different, because those boys lived with her?
Well, it's just, and then for my son, those that know, I proudly wear my autism awareness bracelet. He has autism, and so he's on the spectrum, but he's very inquisitive, very intelligent, and guess what? He'll also try to pull a stove job on dad too, okay? And I think sometimes mothers, when you break it down from mothers and fathers, mothers have they're nurturing by nature. You all are nurturers, and so because that nurturing nature, I think y'all automatically want to see the best in your children, and so not that we dads don't either, but we're more practical thinkers. Women are more emotional thinkers. Men are more practical, and so if we judge based off what we see. Now, if you tell me something, and I know it's a snow job, then I almost call it out being a snow job. And so whereas the mother, she's like, oh, well, that's what my son or my daughter said. And so we just have to realize and respect the fact that there's a need for both, because the mothers, they need that, kids need that nurturing from their mothers, but they also need that discipline and that guidance. And a lot of times your confidence comes from your father. You know, when your father says, son, you can do something, you know, it just means all the much more, because you don't want to let your dad down. So, you know.
In my day, when a man had a son, you know, to carry on his name, that was a big deal. It was a big deal for him to have a son, and for his name to be carried on. What are we losing by sons and daughters not having the father's name?
Well, it's kind of complicated, but it's an all, you know, from the state planning standpoint of view, right? You know, God forbid something happened to the father, and now there's resources and things that need to be divvied up between, let's say if he had other children that did from a next wife, and those children did have his name. Well, the child that doesn't have his name, there's more legal precautions or things that they have to do in order to legally state claim to whatever was left to that estate, especially if God forbid they didn't have the proper estate planning. But even just from a sense of belonging, right? Yes. If that is your seed, I'm sorry, but he needs your name. So regardless of whatever the circumstance was when y'all broke up or got divorced or whatever, that child should have that man's name. And then I've heard it and I've seen it too, and even in my own family, where sometimes the children will develop confidence or psychological issues because, self-esteem issues rather, because the other siblings have that name, but then their name is another name. And so it's like, well, we're all siblings. We got the same mother, but why is their name that and this? And so it's just it can be very problematic. I'll just say that, you know.
Right. And I think we're not thinking of the emotional issues that it brings. I had a long discussion with one of my nephews, and that didn't have my brother's name, and he was saying, how can I find out who I am? And I'm glad that we have that relationship, and I could use that as an excuse. You have a relationship with your family, so you'll know who you are. And identity with the dad, when we were coming up, all the men had their business, and then they say "and sons." You know, my dad had a cleaners, and he said "and sons." Even though he had daughters, he didn't have that. You know, we were never affected by it. But he said "and sons," and I think that name carries.
Wait.
Your name carries, yeah. But I also want to talk about in the home. And in the home and raising up, it's time for school. It's time for school to start. And I remember reading mothers, single parents. It was all the mothers getting all the help. And I thought about, well, what about dads? When I rode up on this homeless family once, they were looking for blankets. They were sleeping on the street, and it was two young girls with their dad. So it was like he had to stay up most of the night to protect his daughters from rape or whatever could happen to you out there being homeless. But even when you're in a home, preparing all the meals and preparing them for school and preparing them for holidays, and I'm glad you have a son, because the personal things are alike. You know what I'm saying.
Right.
So in preparing a home and having a home for your son, tell us about that. Talk about that, can we?
I'm old school, and I'll be 50 on Sunday.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. And and there's a lot of things that I learned growing up in that small town in South Georgia, and that are still with me today, even though I live here in Atlanta and I've lived all over the world and traveled. I bring that with me everywhere. One of those things is how I run my home. And my son, he has chores, he has, things he has to do around the house. There's an understanding that these are things you got to do to contribute. And I'm doing that to build his character, to help him understand about discipline, to help him understand about order, and then, more importantly, to prepare him to be a productive member of society. Like I said, he has autism, but he's very intelligent. My son's been washing his own clothes for the last 3.5 years. His own idea, mind you, it's a long story, but nonetheless, when he decided he wanted to wash his own clothes, I showed him how. He reads, so I showed him, how to separate his clothes or how to, do whatever. And so, and that's just how that goes. But we have to be intentional about the environments that we raise our children in, because if I'm going to be perfectly honest, I think sometimes as it relates to our young men specifically, they're not getting the tutelage nor the foundation that they need in order to be the productive men that they need to be. And whether that's from the mother and sometimes even the fathers. And so we have to do a better job as fathers of bringing that to light.
Well, let's talk about that just a moment. We have a large number of women raising children and boys. What is some of the advice because some of it is just out of control. I remember when a little boy, 13-year-old, got killed, the mom was saying, I'm screaming for help, I'm screaming for help. What advice could we give moms, starting back at discipline and, like you said, the tutelage? What advice could we give moms?
Well, being old school, I come from an environment where it took a village. If I did something, if you and I were friends and I was at your house playing with your brother, if I did something wrong, your parents automatically had the freedom to tighten up your brother and me and discipline him and whatever. And I know that could be a little controversial or whatever, but it was that community. We stood up for each other. And I'm not if I'm gonna see your son or your nephew out doing something he ain't got no business doing, I'm gonna pull him up and I'm gonna say something to him. Hey, I know your mama, I know your granddad, whatever. Now, today's people don't even want you to say nothing to their kids. But for that young sister or woman, regardless of her age, that's a single mother and raising her children, especially her boys, and is need some help, I would say hopefully she has a brother, hopefully she has neighbors or even mentors. And there's organizations like Big Brothers, Big Sisters, the YMCA, just different things that she can, or even if the kid plays sports or in the band or whatever, but utilize the resources that are right there at their fingertips that she might not pay attention to. He might have a favorite coach. Allow that coach to be that voice that, hey, when you got some issues with you, hey, I'm gonna call Coach Crawford, and Coach Crawford gonna have a talk with you. And then, but that kid knows that Coach Crawford is coming to speak with him from a place of love and not from a place of just chastisement, but because Coach Crawford cares about his development as a human being and not just how many points he can score, how many touchdowns he can make or what have you. You see what I'm saying? And so,
yes.
yeah. But I think that's what it starts. And to be perfectly honest, for often than not, even in times where I've tried to insert myself into situations where I saw that a young man was getting kind of sideways with his mother, instead of the mother embracing my support of her, it was, she might have looked at me crazy, or in some case she might even say, "Hey, don't talk to him, don't say nothing to him." But then the very fact that you don't want another man to say something in support of you now, I'm trying to tell your son not to be disrespectful to you and to cherish that relationship. But instead of her embracing it, it was, leave us alone.
We see that more and more when parents call for their children to come in. It's because of violence. The children have more moms, and we did have a few dads, but more moms. The children are fighting their mom, and they come in saying she, and I think maybe we could take this old school advice and run with it, because we're having children making decisions that we never taught them. The tutelage wasn't there, and they never taught them, gave them the wisdom to make decisions with. But they're giving them the opportunity to make the decisions, and it all goes sour, all go left.
Yeah, I think it goes back to a conversation that you were having earlier, and that is, we have to get back to the family and community dynamic. If we don't uphold our communities, starting with our own households, then our neighborhoods, which is, your neighborhood is an extension of your household, right?
Right.
My neighbor across the street, all of them, we're an extension of each other. And if we have this separatist, I'm just here for me, I ain't worried about you, don't worry about it, then we're all gonna suffer because we don't have that support system. And so I feel like it's very important that we do establish a true safety, if you will, with our community, but more importantly, unity. And we're not all going to think monolithic, or whatever the case may be, right? But if we can all come to agree that whatever it is that we're doing it for the betterment of our children, our families, and our communities, I think whatever goes after that, I think it'll work out.
Yeah, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful today after talking to you, because I come to find that we've almost lost control of our homes, as far as, especially when there's older boys in a home. We're almost losing control, and the monetary demands that children put on families. And I think a lot of that time of tutelage is lost trying to make money to meet the demand that our children have picked up from society, that
social media,
that they think this is what they need.
Yeah, I think social media isn't the only cog. I mean, it's a lot of other issues there, but social media has impacted our kids and their psyche way deeper than what people give it credit to. And you have these children that are watching social media but don't have the mental capacity to understand that everything you see on social media isn't true, nor is everything you see on social media good for you. So with that adds that pressure to now pressure the mother, especially if she's a single mom. Mom, I want these new such and such. I wouldn't dare tell my mother when I was growing up that what shoes I had to have or what. First of all, she told me right off the bat, we used to have a conversation, when we go to stores, don't touch, don't ask me. And I'm just keeping it real. So we didn't. So when I see kids in a public setting like the grocery store, Target, or somewhere, and they're acting out like that, I have no recollection of that experience because that was not mine. But it goes back to lack of discipline, and I guarantee you that child is acting out like that. They're not just acting like that out here in the grocery store. There's no guidance even at home. They can do whatever they want. And so the kids only act out in public what you let them do at home. And so it all boils down to just discipline, love, and like I said, that consistency. And if you don't have that consistency, you can't be hot and cold with the kids, because that confuses them. And if you say, if you're about your business, then you're about it. Because if you kind of wishy-washy, then they're going to see that, and then they're going to lean towards the direction that best fits their psyche. So.
Well, that was a great that's great outlook, because sometimes, and I'm glad you said that, as parents, we don't realize what we're doing is unstable, or what we're doing is we don't try to look at our mistakes. We look at, we bought you this stuff, and now that's it.
Well, I have to do that. I've changed. There are certain things that I went through as a child that, as I'm raising Isaiah, I actually have kind of deviated or made my own kind of method, because I felt like, and I realized rather, that some of it was unhealthy, and we don't want to, in an effort to discipline your child and to make sure that they respect you, you don't want your child to ever, quote unquote, fear you. I said there's always room for what I had a respectable amount of fear of my mama, okay? And even though I'm taller than my mama, it's like I had a respectable amount of fear of the consequences, whether that was going to be a whooping or whatever it was. So, but now there's no fear of consequence when it comes to parenting, because the kids, they know the law. They know that they can call a 1-800 number or the police. So there's very little that parents feel they can do sometimes because of that fear factor. So right. For a lot of them, they just say, okay, we're just gonna let it go with the flow. And going with the flow is why we have a rise in gangs, why we have a rise in young boys and girls that are dropping out of school and doing things they don't have any business of doing. And so there's a correlation between the two, and so we just gotta, like I say, reel it back in and get back to what made our homes and our communities and families stable.
We make a big deal of, well, I say it all the time. I put it on Facebook all the time about let's get back to having dinner. Dinner together. As a parent with a single picture, you get a single picture here. This is what I'm producing. This is what, I can see my benefit, and I can see what maybe I could change. It's easy because you're there by yourself. What are the benefits, or do you see any of family dinner, calling family back to dinner again?
Oh, it's very important. For example, because my son is, he's 17, so he'll eat, eat out every day if we allow him to. But I cook at least 3-4 times a week. For one, I want him to understand that it's called being fiscally responsible. It's fiscally irresponsible to eat out every day. So plus, I want him to get accustomed to eating healthier at home, because sometimes when you go, it's quick to go through that drive-through, but a lot of stuff is bad for us. So it's just not the healthiest thing to do. So, and plus, when we're having dinner, that's when we're having talks about anything from what's going on in school to what girl he got a crush on this week to what's his favorite, wrestler doing, whatever the case may be. So I think that's when we kind of bond, and he tells me whatever he wants to tell me. And so I think that's very important. Some weeks are better than other, but for the most part, I do try to. We have our dinner and cook, like I say, a couple times a week. So.
When you said I cook, it was like my heart said, "Oh wow!" Mm-hmm. It just brings back a lot of my bringing up. My dad was a single parent. The thing about it was I was very close to my dad. I was always there. And I came up, I didn't realize, I thought I was the ultimate woman, but realizing after a very controversial personality came up that I was so masculine. So I had to change, I had to adapt and change to say, wait a minute, I took on so much of my dad's characteristics. And I just thank God that you have the characteristics that you have, because your son, and I understand that he's autistic, but I want everybody to know he's very high functioning. He's going to do well in life, and he's going to go far because of the things that you embedded in him.
Thank you.
So, but going out to society again, if I can, and it's said that we could almost say a fatherless society.
Wow.
And I was just telling somebody I have to bring a balance to what I see in mental health and what I see, what's really going on in the real world. So maybe what I see, because I see such a large number of children, and it doesn't go by race, color, or creed. These children are going through so much, parents on drugs and somebody else in the family raising them, and somebody's deciding, even parents, I don't want them anymore. Could we discuss some of the basic things in life, like when your child has gotten to that point where you can't take no more? How do you avoid getting there? We have seen so many people that just say the number is rising every day. They can't come back home.
Wow. Well, for a parent to get to that point, usually they just didn't wake up and get to that point. There's a succession of life events, usually of a negative nature, that have occurred, whether it's loss of job, loss of home, maybe even the loss of a spouse or a partner, and just a confluence of all of those things. And that person feels like the weight of the world is on them, and they don't have it within them to take care of themselves, much less a child. Now, that has to be, from a mental health standpoint, that has to be the lowest of the lowest I can imagine someone feeling, to the point where they don't want their own child. If you feel that way, I feel like they definitely should go and seek some help, but more importantly, put that child up for with another family member, preferably, and if worst case scenario, try to find foster care or adoption. My mother, ironically, I have a little brother, he just turned 11, I believe, but he was adopted. She was doing foster care, and after about 4.5 years of going back and forth with the court system, the judge was like, "Hey, I'm tired of this, Miss Scott. Sammy is yours if you want to take him home full time." And she slept on it, and the next day she decided. So she's had him for practically all of his life since he was like 6 months, but now he just turned 11. So, but she provided a home, or is providing a home for him, and the love that he needs. That unfortunately, the father was dealing with substance issues and incarceration. The mother was dealing with her own, personal issues. So they weren't. Neither parent was in a conducive environment to raise him, and so my mother stepped in initially temporarily, but now it's permanently. So I think there are revenues there are avenues rather that they can go, whether it's with the family and/or through the system.
Yeah. Sometimes when it's your even if you adopted the child, if it's your own child, it's not that easy. Because the state wants you to keep trying. But the parents have lost all control of the child. And so sometimes it's very difficult. And then the guilt that comes with.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, on both sides.
I can only imagine.
Dealing with guilt. I gave my child away, and the child, she didn't want me anymore, I gave her away. And they'll beg and plead, I'm gonna be better. And then it comes back to the same thing. And I don't understand or know what it is about our society that we've allowed our children to get so out of hand that we can't handle it. I don't understand.
Me neither on that one. I don't know. And then, unfortunately, we're giving children, I think, almost too much of a voice about things in their lives at such a young age. I mean, if you're 12 years old, how can you just make a decision about certain aspects of your life when legally you can't vote or even take a drink? But the law says that you can make a decision about certain aspects of your life. But I think it all boils down to that family dynamic and that support system and that community and that neighborhood. If we get back to taking care of our communities, our families, and our neighborhoods, I honestly feel like it'll all work out.
Yeah, but sometimes, and I think that's the greatest thing. But sometimes it's so fearful. You're afraid to trust someone with your child.
Oh yeah.
So, is there any answers?
Well, it's
how do we build that community trust again?
Well, it's a vetting process, just like anything else, right? If you're going to buy, as a woman, if you're going to buy some shoes, you're going to vet out which store has the best sale, which one has the best product. If you're going to get, weave on your hair, you're going to vet out which beautician does the best service, or whatever. So you have to use that same vetting process for who we're going to allow our children to be around. You have to vet out, is this a good coach? Is this a good school? Is this a good neighbor? And if through your own vetting, you don't feel in your gut like this is the person that needs to be having a long time with my child, then by no means do you allow that person to have that type of access to your child unsupervised. It's just that simple.
I want to talk about this one thing, and that is parenting, and that is parenting. Just this last thing. It almost seems to me, just sitting here, such a calmness that it was so natural for you. It was just natural for you. It's a flow, It's a flow with you and Isaiah. I have to teach him. We have to grow. We're gonna eat dinner together. It's a flow. For parents that it didn't come so natural to, just at 3 points, give us 3 points. How it was natural. I have to discipline him. I have to teach him to eat. I have to,
Well, let me say this first and foremost. it's almost like dealing with my son is almost like dealing with a client, right? And I say in this fact, when you take on a client, you have to take them on and understand where they are, but more importantly, where they want to be. So it's no different than when I took my son on. I knew where he was, but more importantly, where he wanted to be. And so, and thank you for the compliment, because definitely it wasn't as and hasn't always been as natural as it may appear on the book or on Instagram, or whatever, or even sometimes people around us. It took some major adjustment, because I was almost 44 years old and a bachelor and jumping in and out of planes and going out, whatever. And now all of a sudden I'm tasked with raising this 11-year-old with special needs and making that also a priority and fitting in. So that was a major adjustment. But I thank God that I had the blueprint, and that is my grandparents, even my mothers, and just and other people close to my family and friends that I saw, and I kind of emulated what I saw in them, and I knew what I wanted ultimately in him. And so it's but three things. First of all, patience. Second of all, perseverance. And then last of all, love. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here, because parenting and children is so important to me, because if we don't get that straight, we're not gonna be straight. And the peace that you brought, this was a very, very peaceful conversation to have, and I enjoyed it very much. I was listening very hard, just thinking of mistakes I made as a parent, but that maybe I could talk about to be better, but I'm sure this is going to make people think. So is there anything that you want to leave us with? Tell us about you, anything that you want us to know?
I think in a nutshell, being a parent is probably is the biggest investment we'll ever make outside of real estate. So we have to be very intentful with that. And I think, so it's like anything. If you want to yield a proper harvest, then you have to make the proper investment. And if that which lacks will continue to lack. You can't get two things that lack and begin more. And that's just not how that works. So whatever you put in, you'll get out.
Thank you very much. Is there any information about you want to leave to our audience?
Oh no, they can just. I'm easily found on social media and Instagram and Facebook and stuff like that, whatever. So.
Don't be calling them too much, because I need all this time. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.